Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Star Wars novel review. This one is going to be my review for Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. So, this is a book I've been looking forward to for a while. Since it was announced, I've been excited for this, and especially after getting, obviously, the Season 2 finale of Rebels, and in general, Ahsoka's involvement in Rebels. Um, we knew, I think, going in that this was going to be based off, like, rough scripts and drafts for future Clone Wars episodes before that show came to an end, and instead they made this book. So it's one of those interesting ones where, like, okay, so it's based off stuff that was going to be in the show but they couldn't show, highlighting the fact that one, the Clone Wars was eventually going to get to a point where, even though Ahsoka left, we came back to her, which was interesting in itself. So, actually reading it here, and I'll just say specifically right now, I listened to the audiobook version of this book, which is really interesting because it's narrated by Ashley Eckstein, who voices Ahsoka in Rebels and the Clone Wars. So that was really great because Ahsoka is the star of this book. It's not just that, like, the book is called Ahsoka, but she's only in, like, half of it. Outside of, like, one or two, maybe three scenes that focus maybe on the villains or some of the other characters, she's in basically every scene. She's the focus of this book completely. Her inner dialogue, when she's actually talking to characters, it fits so well to have Ashley actually narrate the book. So, absolutely, if you can, the way to experience this book is the audiobook version, I think. Just because Ashley Eckstein is the one doing it, and I think she does a really good job at it. I don't know if she's done audiobooks before, but reading the book, it came across really well. So, overall, how is the book? I'm not going to go into spoilers because, one, I don't think it's the type of book where, like, there's any crazy spoilers to really be talked about, but it's definitely an important book. I know a lot of people really love the character. I do as well, so I wouldn't want to spoil anything for anyone. So, the way I describe this book is that it is interesting, worth reading if you are a big Ahsoka fan and want to know much more about her. It does do a good job at filling in the time between her leaving at the end of Season 5 of the Clone Wars versus where we see her when she makes her entrance in Rebels at the end of Rebels Season 1. It basically completely fills in that gap, more or less. It doesn't show you every single thing, but it explains how she goes from kind of being a Jedi kind of away on the run after Order 66 to how she comes to join the rebellion. And in that sense, it's definitely worth reading. I wouldn't say it's absolutely essential, though, because nothing so huge happens in this book that, like, you just have to read it. It's probably a weird way of describing the book, but it's one of those ones where it just doesn't feel as important as it perhaps should have been. But that's not really too big of a slight against the book. I think overall it does an amazing job at portraying Ahsoka as a character. You can see how much she's grown, the decision that she's made. She sticks by it, leaving the Jedi Order. She has some doubts about it, but she very much agrees ultimately with what she did there. She's very reflective about certain events from the Clone Wars, especially training the people on Alderaan and the Barriss Offee issue that led to her obviously leaving. She reflects on them a lot. You see her thinking a lot about Anakin in a lot of situations, Obi-Wan, and kind of how she comes to really accept the fact that, like, she kind of has to move on from them. That it's great that she has memories of them and stuff like that, but if she's constantly reminded by them every situation, she can't really ever move on from being a Jedi because she's always remembering that they are the people closest to her. And it's really nice the way she kind of sees the two of them as kind of like her family members, effectively. That she sees Anakin in that way and Obi-Wan in that way, that they're kind of two different perspectives on the Jedi that very much kind of influenced her going forward, and she's kind of a blend of the two. She's a blend of Anakin and Obi-Wan, and that comes across, I think, quite nicely in this book, in that there are moments where she's called into action and she has that kind of confident kind of swagger that Anakin has, but there are also moments where she's more thoughtful and wants to kind of handle things by talking, which is very Obi-Wan. So she kind of has the best of both worlds there from the two of them. But I think where this book, if it ever kind of falls down a bit, is that it takes a little bit to get started, and I think it's still interesting. It's just, you can sort of tell that this is the point where if these were episodes of the Clone Wars, they would never have started the book in this way and had so much setup before it got going. They would have written it for a TV show in a much different way than they did this novel. We basically catch up with Ahsoka as she has just left one place and is coming to live on this new planet, Raeda, which is kind of basically a small moon, primarily a farming moon. Most of the people there are farmers. And she goes there to basically be safe, and it's kind of out of the way. I think they established that it's roughly somewhere near the Outer Rim. And very quickly after she arrives there, the Empire arrives. Not because they found her or anything like that. The Empire has literally just come across this place and wants to use it as basically a food supply kind of area. The influence that the Empire has over the people there, they start forcing them to work harder, longer, and basically just has a huge impact. The people want to rebel, and she realizes that she kind of has to help organize them so they don't get themselves killed. So she tries to organize them while also keeping hidden the fact that she's a Jedi, of course, not telling anyone she can use the Force. More or less going undercover as this kind of person who is a strong mechanic. That's the kind of role she takes on the planet, repairing all the farming equipment when it's needed to. But inevitably she's kind of forced into a situation where she kind of has to help them and reveal a little bit more about herself. It ends up kind of going wrong kind of towards the middle of the book, and a lot of people die, and she leaves, and I suppose at this point I was kind of like, where's the book going? Like we're getting this moment that we kind of flash back to some other stuff with her, but ultimately what happens is that she leaves in a kind of big incident, a really big section of the book towards the middle. A lot of stuff happens. People that she sort of becomes friends with are captured, and she only finds out about it later and is kind of forced back to the planet to save them in the kind of big kind of climactic finale moment of this. But in between then, like her leaving and then coming back, that's where the rebellion kind of side of things comes into play. You see Bail Organa and stuff like that. I don't want to spoil everything, of course, but this is where the rebellion sort of thing comes into play, and she kind of at this point takes on a more of a role where she wants to do more to oppose the Empire, and she realizes that as much as she could just stay hidden and be a mechanic on all these planets and leave when she has to, she actually does want to make a difference and help to defeat the Empire, and especially because of what they've done to this planet that she over the while that she was on this planet Raida, she had come to really like the people there and see it as somewhat of a home, and so what they've done here, it really kind of affects her. And because, again, remembering the Onderon arc where she trained everyone, she knows she can do that, and she feels that she can make that a reality again. If there's any problem with the book, it's that it's almost so focused on Ahsoka that the setup for any sort of a villain or threat, even the plot itself, is not anything amazing. This book is very much a kind of character study of Ahsoka in between these two kind of moments. Clone Wars Ahsoka and Rebels Ahsoka. This is the book that covers the in-between. And you get what her character is and the decisions she's making and stuff like that, but the actual events that happen may not be the most interesting to everyone. There's definitely some good stuff. As I said, she really comes to interact with these people quite well and form friendships, and the planet's quite interesting. Like other Star Wars novels, of course, you get these other planets and they can be quite boring. At least this one is interesting, and you care about it because Ahsoka cares about it, so coming back there, it's meaningful. It's just that come the end of the book and all the kind of conflicts that come into play, it ends up just being a kind of general Imperial threat. There's some mention of Inquisitors throughout the book. I suppose the most notable thing would be them explaining the change of lightsabers. For me, that was one of the more interesting sections of the book. The nature of how she changes her lightsabers and stuff like that, and why she had to change them in the first place, was really, really interesting to me. that was something I definitely needed to be told, and I'm glad that they did. But I suppose it's one of those ones where I wish this book had addressed stuff like Lux, like what happened with Lux. Was that a relationship? Did she ever go back to him, or what? What happened there? Just little things like that. I felt they could have done more to reference the Clone Wars, but maybe that's stuff that they still will do, depending on if Ahsoka is actually alive still currently after the end of season 2 of Rebels, or what. It just still feels like Ahsoka's story is not fully over yet. That this doesn't like fill in the final gap in her timeline. That there's still something more. That this book, I think, constantly suggests and hints that like there's an importance to like why she has got these new lightsabers and stuff like that, outside of just what we saw in Rebel season 2. So I don't know. She's become a very, very important character. I hope they do more with her, but I will say this is a good book. And going back to what I said near the start of the video, if you really, really like Ahsoka, this book is worth reading because it's all Ahsoka. It's all like new content with Ahsoka. We get tons of references, and it's so focused on her. You really do get to explore the character quite well, and I think the book is written really well. Her inner dialogue, how she thinks, how she kind of goes around talking to people, her being undercover in that, post Order 66 mindset. It's all very interesting, but it's not the most important content. I think you could have been definitely. I felt like that the book was going to address more important kind of concepts with her. In that, I get the time period that they want to do. They basically end the book with like, oh, she's now involved with the rebellion, but they didn't want to go further than that. So I'm basically going to end the video there before I start repeating myself. I only wanted to do a short video on this anyway. Sorry about that light in my eyes. So yeah, overall I would recommend the book. As I said, the audiobook especially, if you can get your hands on that, that is the way to read this book. But if you want the physical book, it's out there, it's available in hardcover or Kindle, digital version. But the audiobook read by Ashley Eckstein definitely added so much to this. I think if I just read this book, I maybe wouldn't have felt as strongly about the book without the fact that it was Ashley Eckstein, the voice actress for Ahsoka, getting these emotions across, and she really understands the character, so the way she read those sections of the book really came across quite well. So I think there's you get more from the book from the audiobook version, so I will say that. So yeah, just going to end the video there. If you want to follow me on social media, links to my Twitter and Tumblr are in the description. If you want to support my channel, links to my Patreon page and also my PayPal donation link are in the description as well. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.